So starting this next year, Kansas freshmen that are coming in are going to have 3 documented experiences and exposures through their guidance counselors in order to meet graduation requirements. So think about your Eagle Scout. That is a lot of work. Or the kids that are in 4-H. They're going out there as ambassadors. They're communicating. They're showing animals. They're baking and growing things. Those need to count for something. So it's a way that we have kids who've been marginalized and not given opportunities. Schools are now advocating for how are we going to get each kid the opportunity.
That is the voice of Trisha Backman, and she is a wonderful Kansas State Department of Education student mental health coordinator. But before we dive into that conversation, I just want to wish you a happy start to your school year. What a wonderful time of year as so many folks are getting back on campus, working with staff members, or having students begin their school year. I had an awesome week as I had the wonderful opportunity to speak in Colorado Springs, just in my backyard at Pikes Peak BOCES, to share my favorite keynote, Enhance Our Capacity with Healthy Habits, which is all about self-care and mental wellness as educators. If you're looking for a powerful keynote session that energizes your team, head over to joshstamper.com/speaking. I have some exciting news for some upcoming speaking events here as I'm going across the country to share this powerful message of increasing our capacity in such a difficult role. This week, I have the pleasure of speaking with Trisha Backman, and she has been in special education for 27 years and just recently has joined the Kansas State Department of Education as the school mental health coordinator. In this role, she's working with leaders in schools in regards to student discipline, emergency safety interventions, suicide and addiction support, and behavior health, as she's on multiple committees in regards to student behavior and suicide prevention. I had an opportunity to meet her in person at the MELC conference here in Breckenridge, Colorado, and her passion is just overflowing as she really wants to help every child see who they are as an individual and to develop the individual strengths that they have. Her core belief is that each student can learn and grow, and she brings a ton of energy, and you can feel it definitely in this conversation. So let's jump into the wonderful interview with Trisha Backman. Welcome back, everyone, to Aspire to Lead, where we will be discussing the visions, inspirations, and experiences from top educational leaders. My name is Joshua Stamper, and you can connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram at Joshua_Stamper. All right, welcome back, Aspire Leaders and Teach Better family. I'm so excited, one, for you to join us with a phenomenal guest, but then also to have someone who I had a wonderful opportunity to meet in person in Colorado at the MELC conference. And I just was blown away by the conversation after my keynote. And Trish just had some phenomenal things that she's doing in the state of Kansas. And we're going to talk about those initiatives and so much more. But with all that being said, Trish, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been just such a joy getting to know you and hearing you present. I think that we're definitely people cut from the same cloth. We both have the same Aspire goals. So I think that it was just a natural meeting for us to kind of bump into each other at a conference, learning about mental health and filling our cups so that we don't pour from the empty cup.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Cut from the same cloth is a great way to say that, because I mean, when you were talking, I just was so impressed with the initiatives you got going on. And I was like, I got to get you on the podcast to share this out. This is wonderful. And I hope some of the folks listening, either aspiring leaders, current leaders in education, can just really take from the things that you've been doing in the schools in Kansas and be able to replicate that where they're at. So with that being said, Trish, I want to really dive into the conversation. But before we do so, will you please share just a little bit about your educational and leadership background?
Sure. I started as a teacher in a special ed setting with kids who, at the time, we used to label it emotional disturbance and behavior disorders. And Kansas just recently, in the last year and a half, switched our labeling because, we're trying to reduce stigma in every area of mental health that we can. And instead of saying a person is disturbed, we are using that it's a disability, because we're recognizing and giving knowledge to the fact that it's body chemistry. These are things that sometimes people control with diet, with medications, just like we would any other kind of difference in our body chemistry. And so we've become very aware and attuned to how we talk to people, because we don't want to talk about people. So my education started, I was born to two parents who had me in their teenage years. And my mom quit school because she dropped out to have me. And so my first student that I got to teach my freshman year of high school, I asked my mom if she ever had a desire to get her GED. And she said that she really thought she wasn't able to do it. And I was determined because she had done all these things for me. I'm like, we're going to do this. We can learn math. I can teach you math. And the thing that I learned from her, she had a car accident when she was 14 years old and had lost her arm, her left arm. And a classmate of mine said, well, of course you naturally are leaning towards kids who have special needs because your mom's handicapped. And I looked at them and went, what? Why would you say that about my mom? Like, why? Really? What? And they're like, she doesn't have an arm. I never once saw her as being any kind of differently abled because there was nothing she couldn't do. So my teaching started very early. I was always involved in helping with VBS, backyard Bible school. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and I grew up just trying to help and mentor kids any way that I could that were younger than me, because I came from a place where I watched my parents work super hard, and they aspired me to try and always make not just myself better, but everyone around me better, because that's how we truly feel like we are doing better. It's not about money. It's not about status. I grew up not knowing that with teenage parents, you're not growing up, in a very high income setting, but we moved around a little bit. And I know you and I shared a little bit of stories about migrating and the difference between what a migrant family looks like when you're moving from job to job, as opposed to immigrants who are coming here for freedom and because they want to be Americans. And so a lot of different populations that I have lived around or with are the ones that I have always been drawn to teach. So when I started in education, my college professors were Dr. Festus Obiaker, and I have to also call out Dr. Weaver. And then I also had Dr. Bateman, who all three poured into me, because as I got to college, I was the first generation from my family. And I felt like I had imposter syndrome so bad, but I wasn't sure that I really was supposed to be there, because I had already been doing some of the things that they were, you had to have a degree to do it, but I wasn't really sure why, because some people don't realize the natural talents that they have. They are teachers. But yes, we need the paperwork, we need the training, the pedagogy, the endorsements, so that we can get the doors open and then go impact and change the world. So all of those people pouring into me were the reason that I ended up coming to the seat that I'm actually sitting in now at the Kansas State Department of Education, which is a total blessing to me. It's not something I had very much on my radar, but I was working in the correctional setting, and our director in special services asked me about coming in and taking an opportunity, and it just led to taking all of the background. I know you had a guest on a couple episodes ago talking about, the unicorns in education. I am one of the unicorns because I never left the classroom. I always had the ability to lead from wherever I was sitting, because I was either on a curriculum team, or I was on a building leadership team, or I got to run the special population school that is in segregation in our Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex. No matter where I've been able to be, we're leading kids. Every person that steps into that educational setting is a leader, and nobody in my whole career has ever made me feel like I wasn't a leader because of a title. So I have a bunch of background in degrees, and I still want to get more, because I've got a study that I want to do for my doctorate. I'm never done learning. As long as I'm on this side of the dirt, I'm always going to be like making myself better. It's that push mentality. You keep pushing until I don't think I'm going to reach the top of the mountain. So my background has been very diverse, and I've got certifications in all kinds of different things. But in my perspective, none of that matters. It's about how do we help others, and how do we take what we've learned from life and pour it into other people, and then watch them grow, and then learn from how they're developing.
Oh, so great, Trish. Like I said, we connected on so many different levels. And, what I was talking about with that group at the conference was helping our own self with mental health. I know that, we got discussing afterwards, and I know there's a lot of things that you have been trying to implement in schools, specifically in your state. So I'd love for you just to share with the audience in regards to some of the initiatives that you've got going on and, talking about being that lifelong learner. What have you learned as a growing leader, and how have you taken that information to now help with student mental health?
Well, as a growing leader, this is my first time being able to lead adults. And I've been on teams with adults, but I haven't been in charge of leading adults. And I also think that one of the most important skills as leaders that we have is listening. And our adults are telling us that they are stressed out. And they're telling us that they want to be in the classrooms. I really believe we have to control the narrative, because there's a lot of people out there saying that nobody wants to be in education. And I have not had one person that I know that's an educator that says that. I'm sure there are people out there, but that also might be a way that we inspire and motivate the leader that's inside them, because what I hear them saying when they say that is they want it to be better. And so why are we not motivating them to help lead the change? So I think that my big role is connecting the dots. So when I was sitting in the education setting in corrections, I just kept seeing kids leaving, and I felt like they didn't have, I called it a day one plan. So when they left, like, where are they going to go live? Are they leaving on Tuesday? So Wednesday they check in with their probation officer. They go and get their papers done. And then on Thursday, they're going to show up for their first day of their job, and they get their apartment, and they need to have plans. We don't ever go through any phase of our life without having some kind of plan. Some people are less, global structured, but some people need to have that day one plan. And kids coming out of corrections where every decision has been made for them, that is not a good place when they don't have places to go and be at specific times, because it's very easy to slip right back into the things that got them in a bad situation in the first place. So that consistency of care is my passion. We would get kids skilled up, motivated, built up. And in the 5 years that I was back in the correctional facility, I lost 22 students to death. And I just, that's where I went to our director and said, I cannot keep watching this. We have to get our agencies, our systems, our schools working together. We have to do better for kids. And I'm just working really hard with all the other agencies in the state. Everybody is at the table. Everybody wants to do the work. We keep saying we're trying to connect everybody because we're working smarter instead of harder. So one of the things that Kansas has implemented is something we called MHIT, which is a mental health implementation team. And the liaison in the school connects any kid that the administration, the teachers, the family have identified are really struggling with mental health issues or with consistency with behaviors. And that person connects them to outside resources by bringing them into the school. And one of the biggest assets in my 27 years with education is I have had kids that on Monday night have to go to individual therapy. Tuesday night, they're going to family therapy. Wednesday night, they go to group therapy. And Thursday, they have some kind of play interactive group, which is another therapy. And then we wonder, as they're doing all of that work over here, why they're not involved in sports or clubs or socializing. They're working on themselves all the time. And these are those soft skills. In Kansas, we call them the competencies. These are the competencies we want every kid to know and be able to do. They're problem solving, they're decision making, they're building their own human capacity, but they're not getting any credit in school for it. So in Kansas, we've decided if we can bring people in where kids are not missing the exact same class every time, or we build it into their schedule, like in junior high and high school when it's certain credits, we can build those into group settings where a group is getting social skills training. But we're trying to bring it into their school day. That way they can be members of their family in the evening and go participate in a sport. I'm a big believer that kids in sports stay out of the courts. When we have kids that are engaged in things, whether it's play or community activities, or if they're doing something at the Boys and Girls Club, doesn't matter what it is, it helps them feel connected. So you asked about kind of one of those motivational things that we hear. And I heard Esther Perel talk on, I think it was Unlocking Us. It was with Brene Brown. So she was talking about, do we truly have a mental health crisis, or do we have an artificial intimacy crisis? She said the artificial intelligence piece is a lot of what we're focusing on, but the artificial intimacy that we're thinking we're engaging in when we're only interacting on social media by texting, but not actually face-to-face interacting with others, gives us this false sense of being connected. And so I just think it's really important that we get kids out talking, experiencing. Kansas has just shifted our graduation requirements. We have a minimum of 21, the 1900s, Madeline Hunter, you're going to have 4 English, 3 math, 3 science. We took all that, and I was on a committee before I started at the Department of Ed, and we looked at what can we do to help kids become more well-rounded other than focusing on those basic cores. What can we do that's going to meet our kids that are justice involved, that are in foster care, those that are maybe facing homelessness or they're living unsheltered, or the families that are migrant that are moving from place to place. And one thing that we were very convinced of is they need experiences and exposures. Some people call them the market value assets, but we want them to know that they can function not just in a classroom. We want them not getting just sit and get. We want them out doing hands-on activities, because some of our kids learn best that way anyways. So it helps them be well-rounded and take what they're learning and move it outside of the classroom into the real-world settings. So starting this next year, Kansas freshmen that are coming in are going to have 3 documented experiences and exposures through their guidance counselors in order to meet graduation requirements. So think about your Eagle Scout. That is a lot of work. Or the kids that are in 4-H. They're going out there as ambassadors. They're communicating. They're showing animals. They're baking and growing things. Those need to count for something. So it's a way that we have kids who've been marginalized and not given opportunities. Schools are now advocating for how are we going to get each kid the opportunity. Our Kansas focus is each kid. Each kid is on a different path. Each kid has strengths. Each kid has abilities. How do we help them grow and nurture that so that they can move on and take those out into the world and make it, the best place it can possibly be? And that's why I'm really feeling like Kansas educators are starting to turn a corner. I feel like there's just a lot of hope. We have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of positive things going on that we're using to not just build kids up, but we're building each other up. So as we were talking in the conference, there's just a lot of people that are worn out. We're all reminding each other, put on the oxygen mask, take care of yourself, because you can't take care of others until you take care of yourself.
Trish, there's probably about 100 things I want to highlight in what you just said and the initiatives, because it's really not just about mental health with students, but you're also talking about staff, which is so important because everybody in the educational system needs to have that focus. But then you're also talking about just the well-roundedness of a person, regardless of their situation, maybe trauma. I mean, there's a lot of things going on and that we do or do not know about, and you're providing those opportunities and trying to, allow them to get these different experiences within the school day and not putting more stress on them outside of school. So absolutely phenomenal. I want to dive in more, but we're touching on this mental health piece, and me and you have had multiple conversations about ourselves, taking care of ourselves in different ways, right? We talk about sleep, exercise, eating well. I had talked to you about this before I even pushed record, and something I found, which for those who are watching on YouTube, Magic Mind, I have found great success in this, and it's all natural. Got a little bit of caffeine. I've been taking it in the morning, sometimes before a workout, when I'm doing a podcast to give me a little bit of energy. It talks about sharpening your mind, lowering your stress, and giving you more energy. But I would also say that I think it helped me through sickness. So I was feeling under the weather for 2 days, and I've been taking Magic Mind, and I swear I got better quicker. And I know it's because of the natural ingredients and a lot of things that are in there. Last month, Trish, I gave a code, which you took advantage of, for free Magic Mind, and it was on the trial. But I want to talk about the subscription. I'm going to put on the screen for those who are on YouTube my Magic Mind Aspire to Lead code, where you can get 20%, but it's actually more if you do it through a subscription. So I'm going to walk you through that real quick in regards to what you do, because I've gotten the subscription and have done this for a little while, where I get a month pack. So it's a larger pack, but I can take one every single day. I love it so much. But when I do the subscription, a few things I like that it's free shipping. One, easy delivery every month. I don't have to worry about it. If I want to cancel, super easy to do so. But the other thing is, like, for the different monthly things that they have, as far as maybe a percentage off, if you use the code, it'll add it to the percent off already. So for instance, if Magic Mind's got 20% on their website, you put in my Aspire to Lead 20 code, it'll add it. So you can get up to 48% off of your purchase. So make sure that you're jumping on to the website here, which is magicmind.com/aspire to lead. And then when you go through the checkout process, specifically the subscription, you can go in and you can get additional. So it's not just the 20% off, but it actually be up to 48%, which is a huge savings. If you did the trial, make sure that you're using this new code, Aspire to Lead 20, because we had a different code last month for the month of July. But for August, I want to make sure that we get this code to you so that you get the savings for a wonderful energy shot. With that, I hope everyone jumps on the show notes, clicks that link, and uses the code Aspire to Lead 20. All right, Trish, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which is that mindset of learning, right? Being that lifelong learner. I think this is a mindset that we can inspire in many, many people, regardless of our title. You know, like you said, and what I say all the time is, it doesn't matter your title, you're a leader on your campus or in your district. So how do we create that culture of learning with everybody, right? The students and the educational staff?
Well, one of the things that I'm putting this out there because I think that when we say it out loud, we have to kind of hold ourselves accountable. But I've got about 4 chapters written of a book that it's been just percolating for a while, because this is something I believe wholeheartedly that, as humans, we've got a human with each other. And I really know that I'm mind, body, and spirit. And so if I'm only focusing on drilling into the curriculum of a child, I can hit my head against a wall and only shove curriculum down a kid's throat. If I only want them to be out there doing sports and athletics or something physical, then eventually that body is going to wear down. And when that all happens, we see all these emotions and behaviors come out because the soul is just like, when am I going to be fed? So I think that my whole philosophy in my classroom, and I'll tell you, my first 6, 7, 8 years, I'm one of those early implementers. So I loved learning new things. My first year of teaching, I got to go learn from Sean Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which is going to tell you how old I am. I turned a whole 50 this last year. I'm celebrating the whole year, by the way. Yeah, because when you turn 50, you have to just do the whole year. But I really think that those 7 habits, like building from the bottom and working our way up, we constantly are learning and growing as educators. So we have to model that in the classroom. One of the things I hear the most, no matter what state, since we've done some work with updating our crisis toolkit, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit here, we have been asked to speak about that in several different states in different conferences that we've gone to. But I think that one of the things that we have to remember is we're hearing in all these different states that kids are behaviors are awful. And I think we forget our role in that is sometimes we pull back and we're like, okay, their brains are saturated right now. They can't learn and process because they're not regulated. But when we as educators match them and become dysregulated with them, it's our spirit. We want kids to learn and grow and do well, but we take it personally like it's a reflection of us. And so if we can do that and then turn the mirror inside and go, okay, if they are reflecting us, they're not regulated right now. That means I might not be too. So how can I push pause? So I really think that we all need to focus on the iPause platform. Like, what do you do to pause? In our work with suicide prevention, one thing that we know through all the research that I've been digging into for the last 15 years is we have our stimulus and we have our response. And when it's this close to each other, we make bad choices. And when we pause, we give ourselves a chance. And so we have to model that for kids if we want them to co-regulate with us. And I think that it is so important for me as a teacher, instead of trying to be that early implementer and having my lesson plans with all the 8 learning styles. I did that for 3 or 4 years and about died on the learning styles hill because I didn't realize in my classes, because I would sometimes go co-teach, or I would be in a pullout, or I would be having my own class. When you're trying to get 8 lesson plans done and then you actually sit down and work and learn your kids and find out you only had 2 different learning styles in there, you realize how much time you were wasting. We have good curriculum. And if you have really high quality curriculum, learn your kids. Some of your kids are visual. Some of your kids are auditory. Some of them need to rap and tap. Then let them do that. Let them use that as their alternate form of assessment. Come and figure out what they're doing and teach to their strengths. We have to use the strengths-based approach. And by doing that, we're modeling that we're learning them. So learning is the important thing that's happening in the classroom. Content will come, but we have to make sure that we're learning. We feel inspired and filled with that because we're working smarter instead of doing 8 lesson plans where we're only going to use 3 versions of it. And that is frustrating. And then we're working smarter instead of harder again. And kids are growing and developing. I think we always have to be learning.
Trish, you're talking my language again. When I talk and do the language of behavior presentation, I always talk about like being a window, not a mirror. And I think your pause, idea there is perfect and in line with that.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
So you had touched on crisis prevention toolkit. I know this is something that you provide folks and is extremely powerful. I know a lot of people want to get their hands on it and use it for either their campus or district or maybe even a state organization. So do you mind just sharing about the toolkit and why is it so popular? Why do folks want to get their hands on it?
So when Jason Flatt legislation came out in Kansas, it was 2017. Everybody kind of came to it about the same time because the death of Jason Flatt, his parents got very active and said, we have to do better. When kids are screaming out with behaviors, we have to start drilling down and looking at root cause analysis. And some of us can take the scientific approach and some of us just basically take a human to human approach, and we have conversations with kids and we continuously listen and we help them learn to problem solve. But when kids come to us and nobody's listening to us, they stop talking and we lose kids to death by suicide. We saw a lot of mental health crisis starting to really peak when people couldn't do those face-to-face interactions. I mentioned earlier, a book that I am really, really impressed with is The Anxious Generation, and it's by Jonathan Haidt. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Our state is getting ready to do a Blue Ribbon Task Force to study computer interactions and screen time and make recommendations based on grade level. We do have some schools in Kansas who've already banned cell phones. It isn't a statewide policy because we have local control in Kansas. But one of the things that we're trying to do is build that connection. I truly believe that when we make connections with people, it decreases the likelihood of the desire to die by suicide because that hopelessness decreases. So in Kansas, they wrote a guidance document that was done by one of our TASN, which is a Technical Assistance Systems Network that supports the schools, and it's funded by the Department of Education. And they wrote a guidance on prevention, intervention, and postvention. When we have a kid, it's a mental health crisis. It doesn't have to be just for suicidal thoughts or ideation or behaviors. It can be any mental health crisis. And so when I came to this place and I started looking at, when I sat in the seat of now becoming the school mental health coordinator, my role is to connect school psychs, school social workers, school counselors to the resources that they need for their schools locally and with their outside community and behavioral health agencies. So I'm looking at all of this thinking, okay, there's nothing in here about 988. For those that didn't know, you can call or text, or you can even chat with 988. Any kind of a mental health crisis. It has been touted as the suicide hotline. There's a lot of people who get help with that. But if kids are going through it, or adults are going through any kind of a mental health crisis, you can talk through anything. Some of our states have mobile units that are now able to go out. There's just been so many updates since our first guidance document was put out. But I asked, if we're going to do this, I want people who are school psychs, school social workers, school counselors, people from our behavior health groups who have had to make the calls, who have had to call the entire schools and say, hey, this is what's happened. And then the 1-year anniversaries come through. And how do you handle that? How do you handle when you have siblings that are coming back into the building? So what we did was we took the experts all over the state of Kansas and we learned. I'm a very big believer about nothing about us without us. We had people who have been attempt survivors. I'm the mother of an attempt survivor. And so we had people who were sitting at the table, very raw and vulnerable, and said, how can we do this better? And I have parents that I have went out and we've done the training and added the reintegration piece, which was not there before, because we have kids that sometimes they need to go to a psychiatric residential treatment facility. Well, sometimes the schools don't get notified and we don't know where the kid went and they're in a mental health crisis and we are all on pins and needles because we don't know what's going on and we're just hoping the kid's okay. So how can we connect that consistency of care and that interconnection of the systems so that when the kid's out, they know that we still care and we're thinking about them and we want them to be well. And also, so while they're doing all that skill building there and they come back, we have plans to continue the same skill building they were doing and not just reinvent the wheel or be throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks, when we have people who've been working with them and they know what their needs are right now that kept them safe and helped them be able to come back home. So we added that reintegration piece, and there's been other states that are like, wow, we don't have a lot of that. So because we leaned into people who had the experience of having to have those situations in their schools, we also wrote scripts, because while I never took a seat in the principal or vice principal position or assistant principal position or superintendent, I never did that in my leadership. I always said special education is my hedgehog. I want to be a SPED director, which, I'm now working with the special ed team at the state level. So I feel like all my dreams are coming true. But as we're looking at putting all these pieces together, how do we do this better when we have people who have been in education 3 years and they really have some great ideas because they're young and innovative, but they don't have the experience and now they're having to make these phone calls. So we went through and we worked with some people who have over 200 hours worth of training in suicide precautions, protocols. They've got mental health first aid, and they helped us write scripts so that when they're making the school reach phone call, we also wrote it so that the secretary who might be having to do the school reach phone call for the kids, our advice is you call the kids and parents, notify them at the same time. We tried to think of everything, and as we learn more, we're continuously adding new tools to this document. But we made scripts, and then we also created blank forms because, like I said, in Kansas, every school has local control. They have to create their local protocol. We do still have some little pockets of Kansas that feel like if we talk about this, we're implanting those conversations into a kid's and giving them ideas. And I will tell you that in my work with mental health for 27 years now, there has not been one time that I have had a conversation and listening with a kid that they've said something and I've turned to them and said, are you trying to tell me that you're thinking about possibly not living? You can tell by the reaction of that kid. It is never implanting anything to a kid's mind, because if they're not thinking it immediately, their reaction is, no, why would you, you get the reaction. But you have to be face to face with kids and you have to look them in the eye and have a relationship. We have to have relationships with our kids to know them. But we also have to make sure that if somebody's hearing something, every adult that is hired by a school knows they have a responsibility to keep those kiddos safe. And so that's what we're trying to empower anybody that works, that's getting a paycheck from the school. Does not matter what their role is. Every single person is a leader. The janitors, the bus drivers, the coaches that don't even work at the school that come and just do their, in Kansas, they're called Rule 10 coaches. We want everybody to feel equipped. So we reached out and we got the Columbia Suicide Screener. We got permission from them because anybody, doesn't have to be a trained mental health professional, can ask a kid, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself? And if they are, you keep them with you until you can facilitate that warm handoff to get them help with a licensed, clinically trained person that can support them and their family. And so we get the family involved immediately because it's a whole person, a whole child approach by making sure that we help the family.
All right. I have the link for the toolkit. And so I'm going to put that in the show notes just because I think this is something that's incredibly important for folks. And I will just say, Trisha's right on the number as far as, if you're an aspiring leader trying to become an administrator or you're a young administrator, I can specifically remember myself having to go and really save a child from actually committing suicide on campus. And so I didn't have that script that Trisha's talking about, which I so wish I would have had because that was a new experience for me and having to have those conversations that are extremely crucial and important. And having no guidance in that, because that wasn't something anyone prepared me for. It would have been nice to have something there to help through such a stressful and crazy situation, to make sure that I had the appropriate response and information to provide those parents, to those that were helping with the child, but then also like that connection piece. And I think that was so powerful in our conversation in Breckenridge. It was just all these different entities that are trying to help our kids that never communicate and never are collaborating to make sure that that plan, that whoever established it to begin with, that it continues for reintegration. And so often, like you said, it just stops. And we just assume that the kid's going to progress or the family's going to progress to the plan or that they're ready. And a lot of times they're not even ready to reenter. And so, what does that look like from all agencies to be able to provide a support system for them to be successful wherever they are with their mental health plan? So love everything you're talking about. Trish, I'm looking at our time and I literally could talk to you all day if I could, because I think me and you are so aligned with our initiatives and our belief system. I wanted to just talk through, some actionable steps. I think a lot of people are probably after this are going to want to reach out to you and get some more information from you on a whole host of topics that we've discussed today. But, for our aspiring and current leaders, if they can do something tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend?
My biggest recommendation for anybody in education is to remember to connect. So I sign off on all my emails, stay connected to stay well. I don't know where I heard this piece, so I've stolen it, I've pirated it, but I can't remember where I got it from. But I heard somebody once say, illness starts with I and wellness starts with we. And I think that we really have to take the hints from the words that we say. We cannot just throw words at people without meaning what we say. We have to be very cognizant of the things that we say and not just say it, but also do it. So we want kids to be socially adjusted, and we as adults have to lean into each other. We have to get back to that place where we're able to be vulnerable with each other. And if we're struggling, say something, because people are going to be there to help one another, but sometimes we just don't know. And if you think somebody might be struggling, don't be afraid to ask. because you will live with a mountain full of regrets if you don't ask and something happens and you were suspecting. So I think it's time, as Americans, we have to regulate with each other and we have to have each other's back. We are an amazing place to be. And I really think that we can't lose hope, and we can do that by staying connected with one another.
All right. So Trish, I want to tell everyone if there's something that you want Trish to like expand on, or if you want to connect with her, if there's anything that she can support you in, how may they connect with you via social media or maybe your email?
So in the frame of being connected, I have kind of socially pulled back a little bit. I have LinkedIn, and it's just my name. And I have a Facebook page, but it's private because I try and narrow. I have teenage daughters, and I don't want all their stuff out there all over the world. And
Sure.
I don't want them putting their stuff out there all over the world. But if you send me a message in Messenger, or
Sure.
you're going to have my email address. The email address is easiest way to get a hold of me. So either my work email or my personal email, I will answer those.
So for those who are listening via audio platform, we got tbackman@ksde.org. That's her professional email, and I'll have that again in the show notes. Or you can head over to my website at joshstamper.com. For those who are watching on YouTube, thank you. I hope you press that subscribe button. And then you can also see Trish's phenomenal kindness shirt that she's representing today too. So head over to Joshua Stamper. That's the page for YouTube. You can also head over to the Teach Better YouTube page, as that's a growing community also. So we're in a lot of different spots. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned real quick for those who want to take advantage, head over to magicmind.com/aspire to lead. Throw that code in for Aspire to Lead 20. If you're not doing the subscription, you'll get 20% off. If you are doing the subscription, I guarantee that you're going to get up to 48% off, which is huge. And I don't know, I like subscriptions, so I like the savings that come with that. So that's maybe just me trying to save an extra buck or two. But everything that we're doing here on Aspire to Lead, I want to make sure that if it's a resource, if it's something to help you in your leadership journey, that it's either free or something that's going to be less expensive. So Trish, I just think you are just a phenomenal person. First off, I just love our conversations. I love connecting with you, but I also just appreciate the work that you're doing, not only in Kansas, but affecting everyone in the United States with these different initiatives. And like you said, a lifelong learner, but also a lifelong servant. And I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. And it's been a joy getting to know you, and I look forward to working together more in the future.